Hello, welcome back to irishracing.com and a new format of show where we're going to be looking back at the weekend's action. So obviously the Dublin Racing Festival took place at Leopardstown. Lots of thrilling action. Honeysuckle proving why, once again, she is so dominant. But we're going to go through some of the key talking points. And joining me once again is Stephen Harris from Betting Expert and Ed Quigley. Now, Ed, I'll start with you. The Irish Gold Cup. We had a bit of a surprise in that race. What did you make of it?
I think you've summed it up. You've hit the nail on the head there, haven't you, Joe? Yeah, Conflated, who on official ratings had an absolute mountain to find, but was given a peach of a ride by Davy Russell, and kind of others in behind were kind of playing cat and mouse and looking at each other, and perhaps a few horses as well underperformed, like Kenboy's starting to show perhaps he's 10 years young, and Frodon dropped out very tamely, but Conflated, no kind of excuses was, on his part. I mean, he just jumped, travelled, galloped, and won it fair and square on the day, I'd say. Question is, can he back it up going further forward? You look through the profile of Conflated throughout over the last couple of years. He blows very hot and cold. He's a little bit of an enigma, hence why he was around 50-1 in the offices, wasn't he, the night before? And why on official ratings he had a bit defined. But yeah, no fluke about the actual performance. Thought he did it well. Again, would you want to take the 10-11-1 for the Cheltenham Gold Cup? Probably not for me. I think he's equally likely to pull up as he is to win it again in 5 weeks' time, for truth be told. The horse definitely to take out of the race from my perspective was the runner-up, Manella Indo, who I've been constantly crabbing on this show for a while now, in the sense that a horse ran deplorably in the King George, even allowing for excuses of, ground and track and stable form and whatever, and was well beaten on his reappearance, yet showed a lot of the old zest there, it has to be said, and was beaten around a similar distance in this assignment as he was in the race 12 months ago, before, of course, he went on to win the Cheltenham Gold Cup. So, yeah, Manella Indo, definitely the big tick, and I think he will reverse the form of Conflated should they meet again next month.
So, yeah, interesting comments there from Ed around Manella Indo. I want to get your thoughts, Stephen, on that performance. What did you make of the run? And, I mean, can we just put a line through him now for the Gold Cup, do you think?
I think Conflated, very hard to fancy for the Gold Cup. I don't think he'll stay. He got a really good ride from Davy Russell, up the inside the whole way, quick and clear, put them to bed in about 5 strides, had the race won. I don't think he'll get up the hill at Cheltenham on probably softish ground. I don't think he's a terrible price now, 10-1. I probably wouldn't take 33 to back him. I agree with Ed. I think Manella Indo is a big step forward, jumped much better, ran on strongly. Asterion Kalonge has got a confidence restoring ride from out the back, despite all the market support. They got him round. I think he'll improve for that with his jumping. I think his jumping is all right. It just makes one howl. I know Vincent always talks about his jumping. I think he's a good jumper, but he always falls. I mean, it sounds a stupid thing to say, but yeah. He jumps well. But he just sort of blind spotted into some of the fences and crashes out. But that was a promising run. Frodon, of course, we must talk about Paul Nicholls. 2 winners in his last 43 runners. He's taking longer than ever to get over the dreaded flu jab. And I would think at some point you're going to start getting worried. I mean, Ed and I were talking off air. I think he had a day at Cheltenham last year. We didn't actually have any runners, Paul Nicholls. He's not going to be having many at this year's festival. Both his runners absolutely tailed off over the weekend. Frodon and Greenatine beaten 3 fences and ran really badly. So that has to be in concern. But my main thought about the Gold Cup, Joe, to be honest, is A+ Tard is a real good thing. I mean, I think it's a very, very solid 7-2. I think it's a fair price.
Great. And we can move on now to the Irish Arkle. So, Stephen, while we've got you, what did you make of the race and the result in that one?
A brilliant race. Ed and I were in agreement, weren't we, that we thought Riviere de Tulle would start favourite. She did start favourite. She ran a blinder. I think she'd have probably won by half a length, bar that late blunder. And, of course, she wasn't able to lead because Saint Sam went off a really strong pace, which rather spoiled things and set things up for Blue Lord. I'd be pretty confident that Riviere de Tulle, in different circumstances, would reverse that form. It was a cracking race. I mean, Blue Lord, I think he had the cards fall perfectly for him. He got the ideal ride and he jumped into the lead when Riviere de Tulle made that mistake. So, yeah, we got the result wrong, but I suspect Riviere de Tulle might reverse the form at Cheltenham.
And yeah, you did tip up Riviere de Tulle as well. But what did you make of the ride? I think Stephen maybe summed it up quite nicely for you.
I just think it was one of those things. I mean, it's all lifts and butts, and if a car had wings, it'd be an aeroplane and all that stuff. But if Riviere de Tulle jumps that last, she wins the race. I think Blue Lord is a very soft Arkle favourite myself. I'm amazed they're going 9-2 Riviere de Tulle, 3-1 Blue Lord for the Arkle personally. I think she will beat Blue Lord at Prestbury Park in 5 weeks' time. I think she's got it in hand. I think Blue Lord, he's got a favourite on Suffrage, but he hasn't really done anything. Like, I know it sounds daft. I mean, he won it 8-11 on his debut in a nothing race. He won it 4s on in a 3-runner race around the Christmas time. And then I think he was gifted this contest over the weekend. Yes, the fences are there to be jumped, and that is part of it. I accept that. But I think, to me, he looked to be going up and down on the spot approach in the last. I think I think he's a very good horse, Blue Lord. Let me put that on record. But I don't think he's a superstar. And,
I think, Ed, one thing I will say is we must talk about this, because there was a lot of hard races at this Dublin Racing Festival. There has to be a chance it's going to leave a mark 5 weeks ahead of Cheltenham. You know, these are proper championship races. I remember last year when it all started thinking, you know, they're going to have quiet runs and they'll be pottering around the back. But this was sort of head-to-head war of attrition stuff, wasn't it? But then last year, I think I said this completely wrongly, as it turned out, obviously, last year. But there were 11 winners ran at the Dublin Racing Festival in 2021. So perhaps they're just tougher, better trained, different class horses.
Well, if anything, maybe it kind of toughens them up and brings them on even more. Whereas maybe the opposite argument of a few horses that come in there off the back of 3 months breaks. Yes, they'll be fresh and well, but maybe that lack of match practice will find them out. But all in all, I would make Vivier Total favourite for the Arkle personally. I think she will take a lot of beating in next month.
Now, talking of a superstar that will take all the beating, Honeysuckle once again delivered for the odds-on backers. Stephen, let's get your quick assessment of the race. Again, it was a bit of a procession. She's beaten the same horses again, hard held, hasn't she? I mean, she jumps. The one thing I'll say about Honeysuckle, I put in my sort of exchange puntery hat on, is, I think she's going to be 2 on for the champion hurdle. I'm sure she'll probably win. If you're a punter, you'll have to have the odds bet on after the last, because she definitely idles in front. And Rachel does go early enough on her. You know, that last 100 yards or so, it wasn't panic station. She's got them absolutely stone cold, but definitely does idle in front. She's the sort of horse, they'll think she's won the champion hurdle. She'll be 5 lengths clear. You'll get 1.03, 1.02, 1.01 bet on, and I bet you the last 10 yards will be absolute panic state. So that's just my looking ahead to my crystal ball to Cheltenham. Definitely be having the odds bet on him running, because she's definitely got a question. She's won 14 races. She's unbeaten. And by the way, another point about Henry de Bromhead, his horses haven't been running that well. I mean, she's virtually the only, he's only had a handful of winners, I think, since she was last out, since she last won a few months ago. So, for her to still keep producing top-class performances at a time when the yard's pretty quiet, she really is a machine. I mean, and she's got nothing to beat, by the way, Ed, has she?
No.
There's nothing in the race. I mean, there isn't a second favourite.
It's the same horses again, isn't it? I mean, Charge will run his race. Epatante, we discussed on the previous show, she's kind of got to get back to the form of 2 years ago, which was about 10, 12 pound higher, and then improve again, which she's probably not going to do. If there was a kind of notebook filly to take out of the race, would have been the third here, Echoes in Rain, who pulled Townend's arms out. But to his credit, he's got 6.5 lengths behind her at the close of play. I could see her being the kind of, if they take her chance in the champion hurdle and they go a mad old gallop, she'll be held up racing the ambulance, and she'll pick off 5 or 6 rivals at the running and stay on into third at 50-1 or something.
That's it.
They're all playing for places.
There'll be five runners in the champion hurdle. I bet you there will not be any runners, because they'll all just swerve her because they know they can't win. They might as well try and run in a race they can win. That's going to happen a lot. I think that's going to happen a lot at Cheltenham. We're not going to have 20 runner races. It's going to be 5 runner races galore, I think.
That's what I was going to ask about, just the rest of the division. I mean, there's just nothing in behind it, right? I mean, who is potentially... No one's going to challenge, right?
There isn't, unless one of they're not going to run in the race, obviously. But there isn't anything coming out the woodwork. They're all exposed. They're all the same horse in Ireland, and she's beaten them all five times over. I just think, I'll have the odds bet on, because she definitely idled in front, and she's done that before. Rachel does go earlier on her. She's the sort of horse, if Ruby Walsh was riding, she'd have won by 2 lengths with him absolutely motionless. But Rachel does go and does ride her out. She was quite strong on her after. She gave her a crack down the shoulder just on the line. So She's a wonderful horse. And it's like, Joe, you probably are old. Ed isn't old enough, but you are definitely old enough to remember Dawn Run. And she was a wonderful advert for Irish racing at a time when Irish racing wasn't doing particularly well. And apparently they were sort of 30 deep at the paddock, weren't they, at Leopardstown? On Sunday. Yeah. Unbelievable. It's a celebration of the whole country, really.
I think what you saw as well, as soon as she won, half the crowd probably left because I think they were just there to witness Honeysuckle, weren't they? So, from a spectacle point of view, perhaps it is a real highlight, but from a punting point of view, maybe not too much to go on. Obviously, the odds on, she's going to be odds on as well for Champion Hurdle. So not much interest really from an Antepost perspective. I think we can move on now though, where there is a little bit more sort of Antepost flavour. I want to touch on the performance of Chacun Pour Soi. Ed, what was your take on his win, obviously, but moving on to the festival in Cheltenham?
Well, his win was fantastic, wasn't he? He jumped, travelled, had all his old zest, 10 years young, but it was a terrific performance, bottom line. Wiped the floor with them. Again, we seem to have this conversation every week on here. He seems to get the phobia of the ferry, doesn't he? Whatever reason, he's come over here and he didn't run badly in last year's Champion Chase, but he didn't get the job done when people expected him to. He came over to Sandown and was beating a distance behind Granatine. Well, he's beaten Granatine, he's turned around about 60 lengths of form in the space of a month. For whatever reason, things just don't click with him. I see Willie Mullins say they've got a couple of tricks up the sleeves. They're going to try and mix things up a little bit in his training routine, perhaps how they get him over to England and stuff, and maybe try and not confuse is the wrong word, but use a few tricks, to just try and perhaps make things different for the horse. I think perhaps when they get into a routine and all senses he's got his travelling coming up, maybe they don't like it. So I don't know. Willie Mullins seems to have an idea or a plan. On raw ability, he's entitled to match it with Energumene and Shishkin. It's just that case of whenever he seems to come over here, the evidence so far suggests his form dips significantly. Look, he's a lovely horse at Leopardstown in his backyard, if you like. He's virtually unbeatable. Again, on balance, I think, what's he, around 9-2, 5-1 with the Champion Chase now? Not for me, personally. I think you could easily see him running a good race again, but then finishing fourth and then scratching their heads to some extent. So, very, very good horse in Ireland. Brilliant performer. Say on official ratings, not much at all, if anything, defined with the big two in the market. But you do have to factor in that across the sea price, shall we say.
Yeah. And so, Stephen, for you as well, is that a similar view, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I think Chacun Pour Soi is the sort of Graham Hick of horse racing, isn't he? Flat tracks, county cricket, 270 by lunch, as soon as you sort of go to the West Indies and the ball's flying up on the rounded chin music, he's getting out for naught. Maybe that's being unfair, but I mean, last year at Cheltenham, Chacun Pour Soi, I mean, it was one of those races, Ed, I don't know what you think, but I stopped watching, it had won. It was all out, just cruising around, perfect spot. Jumped every fence perfectly, take it up at the last, win 8 lengths. Thanks very much for 4-9, whatever price it went off in the end. Yeah. But it just stopped. Yeah. And then at Sandown last time, it didn't travel with quite the same fluency, and he was absolutely drunk turning for home and finished well beaten there. So it's a horse with a hole in it. I mean, it glided round the other day. There wasn't a Grenadine was not right like all of Nichols, so it didn't beat a great deal. Yeah. The captain horse that Rachel rode was given a negative ride, never got in the race and then got tired. I mean, it was a destructive performance. And what was interesting, I thought afterwards, Willie said about Chacun against Energumene that he thinks Chacun is different class to Energumene. At home, he wouldn't think of them in the same category at all. Chacun is a lot better, which is interesting. I mean, it's fascinating to know that that's the pecking order, because I wouldn't have thought that. But on form, I'd have gone the other way, to be honest. No, I mean, if Chacun turns up at Cheltenham, still going to have loads. It's at the back of my mind, by the way. He might not run at Cheltenham. I wouldn't be absolutely amazed that they just ran Energumene and didn't bother with Chacun after last year. So it'd be interesting to see. But still got questions to answer, I think.
All right, let's move on to another horse. I mean, on the Sunday, it was all about the favourites, it seemed like. And Sir Gerhard also duly obliged for punters. I think it is a very favourable day. Perhaps you wouldn't want to be a bookie at Leopardstown on Sunday. But let's get the thoughts about Sir Gerhard, the performance, and also then going on to the Supreme. Ed, start with you.
Hard to know what to make of this. In the fact, when you look at the facts, he's won a Grade 1 novice hurdle over 2 miles by 6 lengths, and he's kicked out half the hurdles on the way round. And I always take the view, you can teach a horse to jump, you can't teach a horse to have an engine. Well, he's clearly got the engine. And so the way I take it is if he could do that in spite of jumping that badly, then crikey, what type of horse do we have on our hands here? I mean, Three Stripe Life, he's funny enough, he's beaten Three Stripe Life by almost the same distance he beat him in the Champion Bumper. So the form kind of resonates quite well. And they've come home in different postcodes here, haven't they? They've got a proper gallop, and they've all dropped out the back of the television. He's really strung them out. And I thought there was a time as they turned into the home straight where Paul Townend had to get serious, and I thought Three Stripe Life looked to be closing, but to Sir Gerhard's credit, he's picked up and gone away again and won 6 lengths at the line. Going further forward is the bigger question, isn't it? Willie Mullins was pushed immediately afterwards. Like, come on, is he Supreme or Ballymore? And he basically said 50-50 each or two. He said, look, he's got, in a way, no reason to step him up in trip, given that he's just won a great one over 2 miles. He's got loads of speed. Yet he wants to see how races are shaping up. And obviously they've got Dice at Dynamo in the yard and everything. They've got to talk to the owners. There's going to be a lot of politics going on here. My gut feeling is they'll probably go for the Ballymore just because it's the easier race. But I'm not necessarily sure he'll stay. To me, I think he looks a horse, he's a flatbred. He's got a lot of pace. I don't know. I've put it this way. I think if he lined up in the Supreme, let's say, he might end up going off third favourite. And I actually think he'd be worth a bet at that price. His jumping would be a concern. But I would take the positive view on it, that if he can do that in spite of jumping, like if he's only got to prove his jumping a little bit next time out and ping a couple cleaner. And I think there's more improvement in the tank. So all in all, I'm a little bit... don't quite know what to make of it in regards to going further forward, but he's clearly a horse with an incredible engine, and his record would suggest that.
With the jumping side of things, I mean, how much do you think could be improved in those, 5-6 weeks we've got to go? I mean, how much could they make much of a difference for Sir Gerhard?
Yeah, probably quite a bit. I mean, you imagine he'll be schooled intensively between now and then, and horses naturally just learn. I mean, again, Willie Walsh, Ruby Walsh and Willie Mullins' insight probably better than mine, listening to them in the aftermath. And Willie's saying, look, he got very lit up, very keen, and he wasn't concentrating. And Willie Mullins was very much given the school of thought if he could have something to take him along, it would probably improve him and allow him to settle and concentrate. At the moment, he's had to do the donkey work in every race he's ever running. He seems to think that if you could just get him switched off in third or fourth and just chase a couple of the roughies, as it were, that might just help him kind of just drop the bit and concentrate a bit. So I don't know. I think his jumping will improve just naturally through time and inexperience. And it's not like it was disaster. I mean, it wasn't, nearly unseating. He was scruffy, and he didn't jump in the manner you'd want for a horse to win a 2-mile championship race at the festival. Having said that, he's entitled to improve. I don't know where he ends up. I know our colleague Vincent's adamant he should run in the Supreme, and I actually am of that view. If you took away the other horses and just said what's going to be the best race for him, I think he's definitely got turn of foot. Where he ends up, who knows? But he's clearly a very, very good horse.
And for you, Stephen, at all, I mean, do you share that view? Or do you think?
I think I do share. I think I totally agree with Ed, almost everything he said, actually. The only thing I will say, this was a fascinating market before the race, because 24 hours earlier, Sir Gerhard was nudging evens, and it looked a competitive race. I mean, they looked 4 or 5 proper horses who might be lining up against it. All of a sudden, at the off-J, he was 13.08 on, putting on the exchanges as he lined up in front. And to be honest, they jumped off a bit like a maiden hurdle on a Wednesday at Clonmel, where the 4-7 favourite was in front, the second favourite sat second, and the rest of them were in the car park out the back having a jog round for handicaps. So it was a Grade 1 race. So it looked like a very funny race in the market beforehand, and it turned out to be quite fun. I mean, horses got beat miles in it. I mean, there were 2 tries in the race. As a punter, looking at the race, I thought there were 2 tries. I wasn't that impressed with Sir Gerhard's jumping at all. I mean, Dave Neveson said afterwards, maybe in a bigger field he'll jump. Well, hang on a minute. He had a soft lead on his own and clear sight at every hurdle, and he made 3 or 4 real proper props where he was losing half a length and hitting the top bar. Well, if he's doing that with a solo trial on the lead in a small field in Ireland, in a 20-runner Supreme when he's 7th in a rough race, well, those little half lengths could become 2 or 3, 1 bad blunder, and he's a million. So I think they'll run him in the Ballymore. He'll be a short price in the Ballymore. I think in the Supreme he'd probably be 5 or 6 to 1. I mean, you can have Constitution Hill, John Bond, and the other Mullins horse, who looks an absolute machine. So Sir Gerhard, who's had a soft lead, jumped scruffily, he's not going to be a horse the public are going to want to bet against those 3. I don't think personally. So in the Ballymore, he'd be up against a lot lesser calibre of rival. Perhaps his jumping would be better. The tempo would be slower. He's obviously a machine. I mean, the flip side to all that, and Ed has said this already, is suddenly you sort of watched the finish of the race, and they were strung out all over Ireland, weren't they? They were tailed off. I mean, they were beaten miles. It wasn't like they all finished in a heap on the bridle. They were all legless. So he could just be a deceptive horse who, you know, like Denman or something, where you think he's not going that quick, and all of a sudden they're all 3 fences behind. You know, he is a machine, you know. So there is a flip side to that. Fascinating.
Great stuff. Well, on the preview show as well, we had Vincent was very keen to talk about the bumpers. Of course, the Grade 2 bumper on Saturday won by Facile Vega, going to the champion bumper. So, Stephen, do you have any views at this stage for the champion bumper and that performance? I
mean, I don't bet on bumpers personally. The only thing I'll do is make a book on them at Cheltenham, because I think there's 30 tries and you often get a right result where anything can win. But I mean, I've never seen anything like it. I don't know what Ed thinks. I mean, I can't remember who it was. Was it Ted Walsh? He said it's the best bumper performance he's seen in 25. I mean, it was just ridiculous, wasn't it? It was like he joined in 2 out. And it was an incredible performance. I mean, there was all this talk about American Mike. You know, I think that Jamie Codd said American Mike will win the champion bumper by like 20 lengths. So there's all this talk. I mean, you just want to be a bookie. You'll be able to lay evens 3-1, and there's still 27 others. So, you know, this is what's going to happen. It's going to be even worse than ever this year. It's all hype merchants who everybody thinks is a superstar. But that being said, Joe, I mean, I've never seen anything like it. It was just ridiculous. It was like a Frankel had joined in at the furlong pole, motionless, and it was a proper race, wasn't it? I mean, again, another race where the market, 8 to 11 putting on, you know, in a race where it looks like there could be 6 champions. They know, you know, they know over there, and it was devastatingly impressive. But putting my bookmaker hat on, you'll just be able to lay a very short price in a 20-runner bumper round a dog track where there's always trouble in running in that race. I'm going to have to be a bookmaker, but I suspect you might end up paying.
Now, I know, Stephen, actually, talking about your bookmaker hat and not really believing so much of the hype, just a word of advice basically for viewers. I mean, how do you actually kind of ignore some of that hype, or how do you listen to it? Who do you choose to listen to when you're making those kind of bets?
There's not going to be any secrets about Facile Vega. I mean, it always makes me laugh when the jump season comes around and people put Honeysuckle in their list of horses to follow. I mean, it's a waste of time, isn't it? Everyone's seen it. Everyone knows it. He's likely to be too short at Cheltenham because of it. You know, you don't know what they're up against. It might have been a freak performance he'll never repeat in his life. So, and also, as I say, luck him running in that race at Cheltenham. There's always carnage. It's like Dodgems around that final bend. It's like a 90-degree turn. And you know, when Sir Gerhard, was it last year, or Kilcrew, can't remember now, it was a real messy race. There's a horse of Dan Skelton's, who I actually think will run well at the festival, LS Bell. She got absolutely put on the floor and finished like a train. I mean, there's 10 hard luck stories in every running of that race. So, you know, Facile Vega's going to get a patient ride. It might not get a run. I mean, you're going to be taking evens in a 30-runner race. So, yeah, but I mean, that's not to crab it. I've never seen anything like it. It was an incredible performance.
All right, moving on. The last talking point we wanted to cover on today's show is the juvenile hurdle. So Vauban against Fildor. Ed, I'll start with you. What did you make of the win by Vauban and worthy favourite for the triumph?
Very impressive performance. Bottom line, 5-2 joints pretty much with Pied Piper now to win the Triumph Hurdle. Horse was a little bit sticky over a few of his obstacles. Went noticeably right-handed on a few, but clearly again a horse with a big engine. I mean, this is fascinating because you've got Pied Piper and you've got Vauban, who are 2 ex-flat horses. Obviously, Pied Piper off the flat for John Gorston. You've got Vauban, who won over 1.5 miles in France when in the listed contest, went on the flat. And they're clearly the horses with turn of foot and speed. You got Fildor, so he looked very one-paced, I thought, against Vauban. I wouldn't totally rule out Fildor turning the form around at the festival if the ground came up slow. If you look at both Fildor's wins, his most impressive ones, both come when the reins really got in, and it turns out it's a real test of stamina and a war of attrition. Let's not forget that the Triumph Hurdle was over a furlong longer on the new course. If we got the reins arrive like the year Coneygree won the Gold Cup and this became like a softer, heavy ground slog, I think Vauban and Pied Piper are definitely horses with class. You can see that flat speed, the push button acceleration. And I think Fildor could get a lot closer to them, granted he got his ideal scenario. I mean, he might not at all. It might be sunny all week, in which case I think he'll get lapped. But I'm on the fence between Vauban and Pied Piper. I think Pied Piper looks a little bit more professional. I think Vauban looks a bit more quirky. You know, they put the ton time for the first time. His jumping still wasn't brilliant, but it was a lot slicker compared to how it was when he met Pied Piper on his penultimate start of the course. A lot of people thought Vauban would have beaten Pied Piper on his penultimate start until he made a mess of the last. It's fascinating. It really is. You've got the two speedsters. You've got Fildor, to me, who looks like a grinder. And then we're talking a lot, but we've mentioned the names Walsh and Mullins a lot. But Ted Walsh is in cracking form afterwards, and Ruby were saying, there won't be an English horse in the top 10 of the Triumph, and the English might need 3 divisions of the Fred Winter to find a winner. And to be honest, it sounds a bit arrogant, but it's right. I mean, those 3 horses, I think, look in a different league, to be honest with you, to what we've got over here. Maybe Milton Harris could serve it up to them with Night Salute, you never know. But all in all, I'm on the fence at the moment. I'm going to be playing very late in the Triumph Hurdle. As you know, Joe, I've got involved in a lot of races, Antepost, and I have strong views on them. This one, I think, could be very ground dependent. We get spring ground. I'll be making my mind up on price on the day between the top 2 in the market. If the rains really did arrive and you could get 5-1, 11-2 on the morning on Fildor, I think he'd be a knocking bet on that ground. He just looks if the Triumph Hurdle was run over 2.5 miles, he'd be my favourite. That makes sense. I think this is a proper case of speed and class against grinding and stamina. And I'll play it very late in the day, depending on what the ground's doing.
And Stephen, have you got more of a opinion one way or the other?
No, I do. I agree. I'm just saying the obvious, same as Joe, Ed the whole time.
Yeah.
I totally agree with that. I think Fildor, who was a very warm 6-5 favourite popping on at the finish, set too slow a pace and got murdered for speed. I mean, Vauban was very impressive, quickened past him as though standing still, turning for home. But Fildor kept at it and kept going, grinding on. And up the Cheltenham Hill over a longer trip, having gone a faster pace, which they almost certainly will, even if Fildor has to do it himself. They'll go a stronger gallop in the Triumph. There's liable to be 10 runners at least. I totally agree with Ed. The English horses have got absolutely... I mean, there almost isn't a juvenile hurdle division in England, in the UK. There really isn't. I mean, I think the all-weather's probably ruined juvenile hurdling in the United Kingdom, and the standard in Ireland is at least a stone, possibly 2 higher. So Vauban was very impressive. The one thing Pied Piper's got in his favour, he's done it at Cheltenham. I mean, it was a weak race the other day, but he could only win. I mean, he won the race a mile out. Davy Russell was motionless. And he said afterwards that Pied Piper needs settling. He's a tricky horse. He pulls hard, but he's settling down and improving with racing. And obviously they'll go a gallop and he'll settle in the Triumph and maybe he'll come through and win. But I think it was a classic overreaction. When one horse beats another, the second is immediately written off, trebles in price. And, there's a couple of lengths. If they'd gone a stronger gallop, made it a stamina test, maybe Vauban wouldn't have got home. And a steep hill at Cheltenham, totally different race, softer ground, blah, blah, blah. I don't think there should be the price disparity, basically what Ed said. One of them's 5-2, the other one's going to be much bigger, 5, 6, 7-1 probably. And that would be, I'd back Fildor each way if that was the case.
Just a final point on this, Joe. I say also there was a lot of talk beforehand. Would they perhaps split the battalions and run Fildor in the Triumph and Pied Piper go the Supreme route? Well, I think they're just going to have to throw 2 bullets at this race now. I mean, Pied Piper being the joint favourite of the race, I'd be shocked if they took him out to run him in what looks the hottest Supreme Novice hurdle since medieval times. And then Fildor, again, like I said, he wasn't all that bad a run, to be honest with you. I mean, he was a bit scruffy at the last hurdle as well. All in all, I agree. I think me and Stephen will stay wavelength there. I think Vauban was the superior horse on the day, definitely. But I think there's a massive overreaction to, you just think the horse Fildor just been tailed off racing the ambulance. He's run a very good race at a Grade 1, staying on at the end, beating 2.5 lengths, having made an error at the last. I don't think it'll be, depending on the ground, but I don't think there'll be a great deal between them again come Prestbury Park in 5 weeks.
Or something, of course, to look forward to. So I think that wraps up in terms of our talking points for the races. But I just want to get lastly, any of your Antepost picks for Cheltenham? Has anything changed in your mind after the Dublin Racing Festival? Ed, I'll start with you.
Yeah, well, I go through trying to think after Dublin Racing Festival, not a lot has changed in itself. I mean, the Arkle would be the one where my Antepost tips have had a big move. Obviously, I'm not third time lucky at 16s. I think he's around 7-1 now. And there will be a big shake-up in the Arkle market this weekend because I believe he's taking on Edwardstone in the Kingmakers. You've got the top 2 English Arkle hopes clashing this weekend at Warwick. We've just had Riviere de Town, Blue Lord in Ireland bashing against each other. Essentially, I'm Riviere de Town and third time lucky Vida Field. That would be the way I'm going at the moment. I'm apt to get Blue Lord. I think he's a soft favourite personally, and I wouldn't be shocked if third time lucky around Warwick, which is a real nippy kind of track. The weather forecast looks decent as well. I wouldn't be shocked if he ruffled up Edwardstone in the weekend.
Definitely.
I know there's a lot between them at Sandown. If you go back to the December meeting where it was soft ground and third time lucky went off and pulled too hard, I wouldn't be shocked if that was a close race. So the Arkle market's brewing up nicely, but I'm confident we'll get Blue Lord turned over and we'll be in the Arkle bar after the Arkle. Put it that way.
Great stuff. And for you, Stephen, any changes for your Antepost predictions at this stage?
Well, I think I was keen on Phil Dorr for the Triumph, and I still am, but you're getting a much bigger price now, so you could probably play each way. I think that'd be a good bet. I mean, Leopardstown, who I like for the Gold Cup, unoriginal, but I think that most of the contenders like Kenboy propping his way round, Frodon, the winner of that race, Conflated, I can't have him at all. So I think Leopardstown has got a shorter price in my mind, not having had that hard race as well. The horse that both Ed and I discussed on a previous broadcast was Hollow Games. Now, he finished third behind Manila Cocoon, who got a very good front-running ride in a true run race. But Hollow Games, I thought, ran the same race that he'd run at the previous meeting when he was behind Ginto. Patiently ridden, doesn't quicken, but does stay very well. And at Cheltenham, no race at Cheltenham is ever won on the bridle, especially these Grade 1 novice hurdles. They're slugfests. There's nothing cruises round and quickens clear unless it's sort of Altior or so. Even that didn't do that. So Hollow Games is a grinder. And I can see him winning. I think, is he in the Ballymore?
He wants the Albert Bartlett, though, doesn't he?
That's
3 miles soft ground. He'd gallop all day.
Definitely,
he looks an absolute...
Very interesting run. He got beat, and a bit like Phil Dorr, my opinion hadn't... In fact, it probably strengthened because you sort of become a bit of a contrarian where you go the other way and think, well, people are going to write him off. He's got beat again. But actually, I tend to think, he shaped exactly the same as he did the other day. So, they'd be my two.
Lovely stuff. Well, I think we can all agree that the Dublin Racing Festival did produce some cracking racing and some good winners as well for the punters. I think the punters were getting one over the bookies, I think it's fair to say. But that wraps it up for today's reaction to the Dublin Racing Festival. We'll be back on Thursday for another edition of Jump To It, looking ahead to this weekend, and also we'll be back soon for more Cheltenham previews as well. So stay tuned to the irishracing.com YouTube channel for more. And if you are going to be placing a bet, as always, we do ask you gamble responsibly.